September 8th, 2023. A 12-year-old girl named Brianna Lahara woke up in a housing project in the Bronx to discover that the Recording Industry Association of America had filed a federal lawsuit against her. Her crime was downloading music. Specifically, she had used a peer-to-peer file sharing service to download songs onto the family computer. Songs she could hear for free on the radio. Songs her mother later said Brianna thought were free because the software said they were free. The RIAA was suing a child for thousands of dollars because the music industry had experienced a structural revolution and could not understand what had happened to it. Here is what had happened to it. For 100 years, the recording industry operated on a single constraint. If you wanted to listen to a specific song at a specific time, you needed a physical object, a vinyl record, a cassette tape, a compact disc. The constraint was reproduction and distribution, making copies of music and getting those copies into the hands of listeners required factories, warehouses, trucks, and retail stores. The entire industry, every label, every distributor, every retailer existed because of this constraint. Then Napster appeared in 1999, and the constraint collapsed. Suddenly, anyone with a computer and an internet connection could reproduce and distribute music at zero marginal cost. The thing the industry sold was not the music. The thing the industry sold was access to the music, and access had just become free. This is Law 1, the law of constraint migration. When a structural revolution collapses, the constraint that an entire industry is organized around, the value does not disappear, it migrates. It moves from the old constraint to a new one, and the entity that chases the collapsed constraint, trying to restore it, rebuild it, or legislate it back into existence, loses every time. The RIAA chased the collapse. They spent 15 years and hundreds of millions of dollars suing file sharers, deploying digital rights management, lobbying Congress, and fighting the technological reality that their distribution constraint had been permanently destroyed. They were chasing the same thing that became free. They sued grandmothers. They sued college students. They sued a 12-year-old girl in the Bronx. And while they sued, the value migrated. Where did it go? It migrated from distribution to curation. When every song ever recorded became available to everyone for free, the scarce resource was no longer the song. The scarce resource was the ability to find, organize, and deliver the right song to the right listener at the right moment. Distribution collapsed. Curation became the new constraint. A Swedish startup called Spotify understood this. They did not try to restore the distribution constraint. They did not sue anyone. They built at the migration point. They built the curation layer, the playlist engine, the recommendation algorithm, the user experience that organized infinite abundance into personal relevance. Today, Spotify is worth over $70 billion. The labels that spent 15 years chasing the collapse are still in business, but they are tenants in a house that Spotify built. The entity that chased the migration captured the structural power. The entity that chased the collapse became a supplier. This pattern is not unique to music. It is the same physics operating in every structural revolution in recorded history. Let me show you the observance. Florence, Italy, 1400 and something. The Medici family is running what will become the most powerful financial institution in Europe. The constraint that organized medieval banking was the usury prohibition. The Catholic Church forbade lending money at interest. This was not a suggestion. It was canon law, enforced by excommunication and occasionally by execution. The entire financial system of medieval Europe operated under this constraint. If you want money If you wanted to move money across borders, finance a trade expedition, or fund a government, you had to find a way to do it without charging interest. The Medici did not fight the constraint. They did not lobby the Pope to change canon law. They did not argue about the theology of usury. They observed where the value could migrate if the constraint could be navigated. The constraint on lending created a scarcity of trusted cross-border settlement. If you could not charge interest on loans, the way you made money in banking was by facilitating transactions between parties in different cities and different countries. You needed agents in each city. You needed a reputation for reliability. You needed a network. The Medici built the network. The correspondent banking system they constructed across Europe was not a workaround for the usury prohibition. It was the infrastructure that became the new scarcity. Any banker could lend money if the rules changed. No banker could replicate the Medici network because the network required decades of trust, relationships, and institutional presence in dozens of cities simultaneously. The constraint migrated from capital provision to settlement infrastructure. The Medici captured the migration. They became the most powerful family in Europe, not because they had more money than everyone else, because they controlled the layer that everyone else depended on. This is the law. When the constraint collapses, do not chase the collapse. Do not try to restore the thing that became free. Do not sue the 12-year-old. Do not build a better version of the thing that is now abundant. Instead, ask the diagnostic question. What does the collapse of this constraint make newly scarce? That is where the value has migrated. That is where you build. The music industry collapsed the distribution constraint and created a scarcity of curation. Spotify built at the curation layer. The internet collapsed the information distribution constraint and created a scarcity of relevance. Google built at the relevance layer. The cloud collapsed the software distribution constraint and created a scarcity of integration and orchestration. Salesforce built at the integration layer. The physics are the same. The names change, the geography changes, the technology changes, the physics do not. Now, here is why this law matters to you right now. Artificial intelligence has collapsed the constraint on cognitive production. That means writing, analysis, research, design, code. The cost of producing these outputs has fallen by orders of magnitude. The thing that your industry sold, the thing that your practice was organized around, the thing that justified your pricing and your staffing and your timelines has become abundant. The RIAA response is to fight the collapse, to insist that the old model still works, to defend the deliverable, the timeline, the billable hour, to sue the 12-year-old. The Medici response is to ask the question, what does the abundance of cognitive production make newly scarce? That question is the subject of the next lesson. But before we get there, I want you to do something. Look at your own business. Look at the core service you provide and ask yourself, honestly, is the thing I charge for built on a constraint that has collapsed or is collapsing? If the answer is yes, you are not in trouble. You are in the same position as every entity in history that has faced a constraint migration. The question is not whether the constraint has collapsed. The question is whether you will chase the collapse or capture the migration, the RIAA or the Medici. That is the choice. It has always been the choice. And the physics do not care which one you pick. Take a few days with this. Apply the diagnostic question to your own practice. Then meet me in lesson 1B, where we will map out exactly where the value has migrated in the AI economy and what it costs to build at each migration point. See you in there.